Vamos. Buenos días a todos. Hoy Marta ha disculpado su asistencia porque tenía una visita al dentista y me ha pedido que haga yo la presentación y los honores del último seminario, creo que es de la temporada. No sé qué del último, pero espero que al nivel de los anteriores, lógicamente. Entonces, un gusto que esté con nosotros José Real Dato, porque Pepe tiene una conexión desde hace mucho tiempo muy informal con el Instituto, porque fue uno de los primeros contratados en la época en la que estaba empezando a hacer la tesis, en el año 2004 o 2005, si no recuerdo mal, o 2003, cuando todavía el Instituto se llamaba Unidad de Políticas Comparadas, y disfrutó de las buenas vistas al Retiro, y era la parte buena de disfrutar del Parque del Retiro en aquel entonces. Luego se marchó, ahora es doctor por la Universidad de Granada en Ciencia Política y profesor titular en la Universidad de Almería, y ha trabajado sobre algunos temas en los cuales algunas de las personas que están aquí han trabajado anteriormente. Su tesis doctoral, y esa es un poco la conexión que teníamos en el pasado, fue sobre las políticas de formación del personal investigador, si no recuerdo mal, pues al final fue eso el producto. Y él ha trabajado mucho en el pasado sobre el tema de las élites políticas y sobre el tema de las políticas públicas. Su campo específico son políticas públicas y tiene algunos trabajos sobre los enfoques analíticos. Y esto es un poco la presentación empírica de un proyecto en el cual viene trabajando desde hace algunos años sobre el papel de los expertos y de los asesores en los procesos de toma de decisiones de los gobiernos, y la conexión entre gobiernos, burócratas y el sistema político. Y solo darle la bienvenida y es un gusto tenerle de vuelta aquí, ahora que han pasado unos años. ¿Puedes empezar como quieras?
Pues muchas gracias, Luis, por invitarme a estar aquí esta mañana. También es un placer volver porque no es realmente volver porque nunca he estado aquí, pero sí volver al CSI, que fue en su momento mi casa, y pude, como ha dicho Luis, pude disfrutar de las vistas al Parque del Retiro, aunque nuestro despacho no tenía vistas. Eso era solamente para los jefes. Y bueno, lo que ha dicho un poco, contar que lo que voy a presentar aquí.
Hay algunos colegas que no hablan español.
Okay.
Creo. Entonces no sé si...
Should I speak English? Or?
I don't want to restrain you.
No, I can't speak English. No problem.
Johannes is behind you as well. I don't know.
Sorry.
If the slides would be in English, I could read the slides, that should be also fine for me.
Okay. No, está en inglés, sí. Pero bueno, puede
No, hazlo como quieras, como te lo hayas preparado.
Claro,
Sí,
te la preparas en español.
no he preparado nada. No, perdón. Okay, I will speak English, so no problem. Okay. So I was telling that this is a program, a research project I've been involved in the last 4 or 5 years. And what I'm presenting here is some outputs of this program, because are the results of a couple of projects. One funded by the National Ministry of Science, the other funded by the Andalusian regional Ministry of Economy, I think. And it's about, my main interest here is about how top-level officers translate knowledge into the policy process. So, as Luis mentioned, my two basic areas of interest are political elites, in this case, political administrative elites, and public policy. So I wanted to link both interests. And during the last 4 or 5 years, I've been working with other colleagues in Juan Rodríguez Teruel and from the University of Valencia, Salvador Parrado as well. We're currently working on this. He's part of one of these projects about what's the role of political elites in the policy process in terms of how they contribute to the rationality of the decision-making process by incorporating technical information into the policy process. So this is more or less the context of the presentation. What I'm presenting here is based on a draft of a paper I wrote in last year in September, but I didn't finish the paper. I just wrote the introduction, and I didn't have time to finish the paper, but I'm presenting some results about how experts and the role of experts are perceived by policymakers in the policy process. So the main focus of this presentation is how top-level officers, I mean junior ministers, directors general, deputy director general, the peak of the bureaucratic organization, how they perceive and use the knowledge produced by experts and how they incorporate it in the policy process. So this is linked to a, I wouldn't say new, but there is a revival of this kind of studies about the use of scientific information, technical information in the policy process in the last years, and one of the lines of this work of this revival is about the role of experts in the policy process. Experts, by experts I mean people that they master some kind of certified knowledge. Mostly we are referring to academic experts or certified by academic institutions, but also they can also work in other type of organizations like think tanks or consulting firms. Okay. The results I'm presenting here, they are based on two surveys. One to top-level officers in the national administration. I will talk later about the features of the surveys, and another survey on the regional level. So the basic argument here is I'm trying to explain how which factors affect the perception of the influence of experts or the different types of experts in the policy process. And I'm looking at two, we can say, two causal paths here. One is that influence of experts comes from the direct mobilization or the direct participation or the direct interaction of experts with policymakers. So we meet regularly, and then this makes top-level officers to understand or to acknowledge the importance of experts in the policy process, their influence. Okay. The other causal path would be that experts are important not because of their presence or their participation in the policy process, but because of the information they produce. Okay, because they elaborate knowledge that is useful to policymakers in some way. Can be useful because it contributes to the justification of policy decisions, or because it contributes to improve the design of public policies. You know, these two basic uses of knowledge, political and instrumental. I don't know if you are familiar with the literature here, but that's not the point. I'm not going into this because it's not the main topic of the presentation. So these are the two basic parts, the basic argument that is behind the hypothesis that I intend to check in this paper. The first hypothesis is that the interaction with external experts in the policy process increases the perception of the influence by policymakers. Okay, this is the first hypothesis. And the second one is the influence of external experts in policymaking is directly related to the extent policymakers use the knowledge of those experts. Is the argument. I think, do you need any clarification? It's quite simple. Influence comes from interaction, influence comes from the use of the information or the knowledge produced by those experts. Okay? So I checked this hypothesis with the results of two surveys. One survey for each of the projects I mentioned before. One was a survey we managed to survey 324 top-level officers in 22 ministers in 2022. This is for the Spanish Central Administration. And then last year, we surveyed 736 top-level officers, equivalent positions, in the 17 comunidades autónomas, regional governments in Spain. So this makes about 1,000 interviews to top-level officers. I repeat, from deputy general directors, when applicable, because in some regional governments they don't have this position, to junior ministers. We didn't send the survey to ministers because we didn't expect they answered, basically. Okay.
What do you mean by junior ministers or
Secretarios de Estado, secretaries of state.
But at the community, at the regional level, what would that be? Just director general?
No,
secretario general?
secretario general, viceconsejero, depende de la comunidad. It depends on the regional government. In other regions is they have other names. Secretary. Okay. I can't remember now the different.
Includes director general.
Yeah, director generals are included, of course. Also directors of ministerial offices or the junior ministerial offices. I mean, people in advisory positions. Okay. So these are the target population of the two surveys. The response rate, we were surprised in a very positive way, because the rate of response was quite high for this kind of service. It was an online survey, but we got 33% for the central government and 31% for regional government. This obviously varies from some regions. For instance, in the regions we got the highest response rate were, can you guess which regions?
Basque Country.
No, Basque Country, no.
Catalonia.
Catalonia,
Andalucía.
no. Valencia,
Murcia.
Balearic Island, Madrid was a little bit, Murcia was also, and the most well, but these results are are weighted. So we, but the most and the most I would say is the, does this word exist, reticent or reluctant participants, where they were? No, Madrid was okay. Well,
Galicia.
Galicia,
You
yes,
didn't mention so, I think.
yes, Galicia, Castilla, León. It was no, Aragon was okay. It was concentrated to the northwest. Asturias as well. Navarra was also a very high rate of participation. This also tells you, I mean, there's a lot of lessons we learned in practical lessons, how we can talk about this later because the field work of this service is also an experience in itself. how Spanish public administration works in terms of transparency, for instance, or how this the central administration is like, maybe you are familiar with the picture, but it's like some 22 islands isolated from each other. They have the different policies, different views of what is transparency or what. There was, this is an excursus. Last week there was an article published in Cibio, you know, about the problems they did reflects basically what I was luckier than them because I managed to get all the information I need to contact people, this public information, to contact the general the directorate of whatever, or the Secretary of State. This is supposed to be public information, but in some ministries this was interpreted as not public information because, and in some cases they didn't provide information because they didn't have this information centralized in the ministries. So there are some curious or interesting stories to tell about this. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. So as I told you, the focus is on external academic, external experts, academic, think tanks, and private consultants. We also included questions about think tanks in the regional survey, so not in the central administration. And we use as a contrast of our dynamics stakeholders, trade unions, business associations, to see whether the perception of the influence of stakeholders is also driven by the same mechanism or the same factors that in the case of experts. The dependent variable is top-level officers' perception of the policy influence of each type of actor, from ordinal scales, from no influence to a lot of influence. And okay, well, this is the variables of interest. So we operationalize direct participation. The first the variable operationalized in the first hypothesis is the frequency of meetings between policymakers and these experts, on the one hand, and the variable of operationalizing the second hypothesis, the knowledge uptake hypothesis, is the frequency of use of information produced by these actors.
Just a point of clarification.
Sorry.
For your decision rule to consider one or the other is that experts are not present physically in the second?
Sorry?
That direct participation, there is a physical presence.
See, physical meetings.
Meetings. So,
or physical or online, but there are meetings.
Consider that you are in the second case, experts have to be absent.
No, because the question refers to the types of information or the sources of information. So the question here in the first case was, how frequently you meet with representatives of think tanks, with academic or researcher, people in academia or researchers, how frequently you meet private consultants.
So the question was about frequency of interaction.
Interaction, yeah. And the second one was how frequently you use outputs or information produced by academics.
They are not mutually exclusive.
No, they are not mutually exclusive, but they focus on different aspects of the. Is this clear or okay? Yeah.
But it's just use of, I mean, just read the, like article or read the opinion of expert. It's not like it's not how to use this opinion to inform your policies.
Opinions of experts is also considered, but we don't know if this opinion how has been
used afterwards.
Not used, but how has been delivered. Because
so it's, as I see it, it's two different dimensions. One is interaction, meetings, and the other one is use
of information.
However, whichever the mechanism of provision.
You can read papers, for instance, policy papers or academic papers, or directly this information from interview with an expert in some kind of journal, and then you use that information. Here, of course, maybe your point was that there can be some kind of overlap. Differentiate
that in a meeting
and using expert opinions.
Okay, for me the problem is in the second dimension, that how do you isolate the use from the simple meeting? So I meet you, I talk to you, and then in the formal operationalization of your measures, that is different from use.
Okay, but the thing is that there is the correlation between use and meetings is not very high.
Okay.
Well, we have plenty of personal experiences of them. I would not be surprised about that personally.
Okay. So these are, I'm very sorry because I hardly can see this here. So, but you can see here, and oh, shit, sorry, the number disappeared. But here you can see that. Okay, did you expect this picture? No? I'm telling you. Well, this is the perceived influence. Who are the most influent actors in the Spanish policy process according to top-level officers in the central administration?
The bosses.
The bosses.
The bosses.
No influence.
Ministers and secretaries of state, director general. This is a hierarchical thing. Prime Minister office here. European Union institutions. This is
Assessores.
this is consulting bodies.
Okay.
This is quite surprising for me. Yeah, councils, committees, blah blah blah. Technicians, low-level bureaucrats. So most important people, most influential are people within the ministries, within the bureaucratic structure. Then we have other ministries. And then these are people from outside the public administration, with the exception of, we have stakeholders, regional governments, the party in office, political party, and then here we have experts. external experts. Okay. And then we have the parliamentary group in the. Here, external experts is basically academic experts, because when we test the.
You say parliamentary group to which the government belongs.
Belongs, yeah. The parliamentary group has not influence in the, which is also expectable in the case of Spain. Okay, and this is for the national administration, and for the regional administration, the picture is very similar, almost identical, even in the order. Bosses, directors, prime minister, regional prime minister office. Here we included more items in the question. So here we have, for instance, the regional minister office, cabinet, technicians. There's some change in the order, but basically the picture is very similar in both levels of government. Here we have stakeholders here, and here we have experts, academic experts, and then we have this is, for instance, interesting. Other regional ministries, they function like islands, according to the answers of top-level officers. Think tanks and private consultants. They have a very low influence in decisions.
Sorry, just a quick question because I cannot see the
Colors.
Sorry.
the labels. For the central administration, did you ask what was the influence of regional governments?
Yeah. Here.
But that's the responsible for health autonomous, right?
Yeah, and this is
In the previous speaker, you asked about.
Yeah, other administrations.
So like the regional.
Here. Yeah. Just behind stakeholders.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's almost
the reverse.
Parallel, the reverse in both. There's some slight changes in some positions, but it's practically the same picture in both levels. Okay, more figures that you can see from there. Okay, this is about meetings. The frequency of meetings. Sorry.
I would have a question to your last slide. When you say stakeholder, you include interest representation groups, lobby groups.
Yeah, lobby
media.
groups. No, not media. Media is not included there. Interest groups, NGOs, trade unions, business associations. That's one group because we couldn't. This was a quite long questionnaire because that's why we think we are very lucky of the response rate. We had to condensate everything. So
Get it. And public opinion is not reflected.
No, not
Like what is expected of the policymaker.
Yeah, no, it's not there.
Yeah, thanks.
We forgot, but this also was I didn't say that, but it was also a comparative project with other countries, and we had to.
Yeah, the question is if the question in the questionnaire was influencing policy making in general, or
In your area.
but did you break up the policy making process?
No, it was in the decision, the design, influencing the design of public policies in your specific policy area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you ask about courts or?
Yeah, courts. There are so many, but courts we didn't ask about influence of courts. Sorry, because I don't remember all the, and I haven't focused. No, I think courts was not included here. So, or no, it wasn't. Anything else? Or? Okay. So this for meetings. This is the frequency of meetings. I must say that this is the question was an ordinal scale about the frequency, but then we translated to make it a little more manageable, also for the analysis.
Can you say what the colors means?
The bottom is
Never print
always
daily. Okay, but these are
Purple is
the average
never.
days per year. We kind of translated this into a average days per year of meeting these people. So see, here we can see that's the same pattern, that the most important thing is what happens within the ministries. So meetings with other officers, meetings with officers of other public administrations, stakeholders here, but they are much less frequent. Meetings with representatives or officers of European Union or other international organizations. And here we have meetings with researchers and academics. Okay. Meetings with journalists, in this case. And finally, meeting with MPs or party representatives. Again, the party element is as a residual importance in this case. And the picture for the regions is very much very similar. Just in the one interesting difference is that the second group with which the meetings are more frequent in the case of regional government is the stakeholders. They meet with other officers, but also with the stakeholders in this case. And also and the difference is, but in this case, the difference is not significant. Meetings with academics, very similar to the frequency to the case of the general administration, and also meetings with, they hardly meet with private consultings and representatives of think tanks.
Just a question, vocales asesores were not included in
No.
the...
Unfortunately not. That we couldn't include. I regret not including them because I'm now interested in the role of advisors and.
Yeah, because they have a different dynamic.
Yeah,
of
they have a
meetings
different-
and the perception might actually be
Yeah.
reversed because they mediate. But anyway,
Yeah.
just a point of clarification.
So
One question though, these questionnaires have been done during the COVID pandemic or at the end of the COVID pandemic? And do you expect that these findings are more general or specific for this specific period of time? Because if I remember at the time during the COVID pandemic, it's not surprising for me that most meetings took place with the ministry because there were a lot of travel restrictions and keeping distance and stuff like this.
the fieldwork for the first survey was between October 21 and May, July, depends because we got the information from some ministries immediately, but in some cases we had to it was a much longer bureaucratic process. And we finished in May, approximately 2022, but it was COVID, but it was not and probably this has could have,
Vaccination had already started.
yeah, whether vaccination was in place, and I don't know sincerely what could be the influence of COVID but the fieldwork for regions was much later. It was last year, and you see that the patterns are very similar in both cases. I don't know if this was held last year, maybe participation in meetings will be more. But we know that during COVID, we didn't reduce the meetings, we increased the meetings. online meetings. Huh? Don't you remember? So, well, source of information. Again, intramural source of information are the most important. And then the same pattern. Stakeholders, academics, private consultants in the case of the central administration. That central administration get most of the information for policy making central administration in Spain comes from the central administration. They have their experts, they have a lot of expertise within ministries, so this is not a surprising picture, I think. In the case of regional governments, it's basically the same. Also, we can see also the importance of European Union. Information from the European Union is very important. And here you asked about courts. Yeah, information from courts is also very important. Some cases because sentences, etc. And then we have experts, academic experts. And here, for the first time, is that academic experts are more important in terms of the frequency of the use of information produced by these people. But the difference is not very significant. And then we have private consultants and think tanks, which are the less important source of information. So for those people working for think tanks and elaborating policy papers, blah, 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 this is what you get from your work. Don't waste your time. Well, and this is I think this for you may be more interesting because these slides, next to slides, refer to the types of information. So it's scientific information important for policy making is perceived as important by policymakers in the central government. Here you have the position of research information, scientific information. Most of the information, the use is legal information. Laws, legal reports. Then they use organizational information, data from organizational control, statistics, expert opinions, but see the difference. And then policy evaluation is hardly used. Policy evaluation results. So this is also has to do probably with the lack of institutionalization of policy evaluation, but this is a spoiler. I have another paper that is under review now, but the result is that institutionalization doesn't have to do with the use of evaluation. It has to do with the personal characteristics of the people in charge. And survey data, because it's only
at this point of the research, or in this particular piece or paper, you didn't look at the heterogeneity across ministries, because one would think that the policy area would be important in the internal configuration of sources.
Yeah,
it's not the same like environment or justice.
Environment is one of, for instance, in terms of this heterogeneity between ministries, there are significant difference. I can't remember, but I can think about the Ministry of Ecological Transition, the Ministry of Health. There are commonsensical differences in terms of the use. For instance, in terms of the use of legal reports, the Ministry of Justice or the Ministry of Interior is also the policy areas, because we have a variable for policy areas. We coded all the or the bureaucratic units according to the comparative agendas project codes. So there are differences between policy areas and also differences between ministries. But again, in terms of evaluation, for instance, it is surprising. A result that I thought it was surprising is that one of the ministries that uses evaluation the most is defense. But you see that the use is very low in most of the cases. And this is the picture for the regions. Basically, it's the same picture, only that we have sorry, the label was lost here, but this is stakeholders. No, this is expert opinions, and this is researchers. We see that expert opinions are more important for the central administration than for the regional administration. Okay, there's some. Hold on. How much time? So, Luis, how many minutes?
15.
15 minutes? Okay. So this is the descriptive picture of the presentation. Basically, we see that the basic takeaways is that most of the information is intramural. Researchers are more important than other experts in both government levels. There are some differences between government levels in terms of types of information and the frequency of meetings. And okay, let's go to try to explain where these perceptions of influence come from. Okay, I use a number of control apart from the main independent variables. I use other controls in the analysis, like the general use of research results. So the assumption here is that people more familiar with the use of technical information will appreciate more the influence of experts. The degree of agreement within the policy area. So probably experts are more important. The basic idea, this is taken, for instance, from the advocacy coalition framework, is that rational policy making is more easy where you have low levels of conflict in policy areas. Okay. The analytic capacities, both individual and organizational. Okay. So higher analytical capacities, people who's able to read a regression output, for instance, or to understand a complicated, a sophisticated analysis, are more likely to appreciate the influence of experts. Okay, and the party in the ministry, I also test the possibility that there are some variations. For instance, in the regional governments, we have some ministries that belong to Vox. The party in charge is Vox, and those are Socialist Party, regional parties. We've also tested the influence of this variable, and also we control for the rank of the top level officer, because there are difference between, it's not what a deputy general director thinks compared with the junior minister. In general, I don't enter in these results here, but in general, deputy general directors think that all these experts are less influential than top level officers. Okay. I use ordinal logic or generalized ordinal logic because in some cases the assumption of parallel regressions is not held. So sorry for this.
Can I just a question? Do you ask them if they have a PhD?
Yeah, but I don't put this
You
in.
don't?
No, I haven't entered the inform because it's too a lot of the model. We have a very small samples in the case of in order to compare the two samples. But
And do you have information about whether they have held their positions in academia before? Like we have.
yeah, we have.
Who are,
We have.
so you have the information of whether.
Yeah,
they have
but this is correlated with the familiarity with research techniques and
Well, it depends.
in
if
some
they are-
cases.
If they are mostly lawyers, no.
No.
Uh,
Yeah, but I tried it.
And the other side of the mirror, what about the expert having government experience?
Yeah, we also have this information.
So he knows how to talk to them.
No, but we have information about the top level officers, whether they have expertise in the area or not. But this could also be tested.
Yeah,
We could put all the
but you don't have it.
or the stuff in the regulations. It doesn't work. So these are the results. Green is significant results. The dotted lines is significant, but only 0.1%. This is below 0.05%. So I only have 15 minutes, but the basic idea is that influence depends on basically on meetings. These are, sorry.
I wonder if you differentiate if the experts are Spanish or not.
No.
Any expert.
No, because we don't ask about experts.
But
We don't ask experts. We ask top level
You
officers.
don't ask if they move the information coming from Spanish experts or.
No, sorry. That would be interesting, but okay. So the basic idea is that and meetings is the most explanatory, is the variable that explains the most of the evaluation of the influence of experts. Here we have the models for academics in the general administration. This is the only case where the use of documents and information, but this is this is we contrast this information with the stakeholders. We see that the pattern for stakeholders is different. For stakeholders, it's important meetings, but also using the information provided by the stakeholders. Okay. Academics in regions, meetings, also the use of information produced by experts is important. In the case of think tanks, meetings is the significant. But the pattern is that the more meetings you have, the more influential you think is the actor. And also in the case of consulting firms, meetings is important, and here we also control the data from scientific research. So those top-level officers who are more used to use scientific research results also tend to think that consulting firms are more influential. Here we also see that in the case of consulting firms, using information which is related to these other results has a significant effect, but at a lower threshold.
So the outcome, I don't know.
Sorry, this is
lost about the definition of outcomes. What are the outcomes? 0, 1, 2, maybe it's me, just a clarification.
No important, little bit important, quite important. Well, no, not influential, little bit influential, quite influential, very influential.
The consulting firms. No, yeah. For consulting firms.
For consulting firms. So we see that, okay, most of the people think that they are not influential at all. A lot of people think that it's much more likely that they think that they are a little bit influential.
But the respondents are officials.
Yeah, officials.
Not
Yeah.
consulting firms.
No, officials.
It's
official.
official
We think about the
perception
perception of the influence of consulting firms. So we tell, okay, these consulting
Is there
firms.
any group that is influential without meetings?
No. That's.
Sorry, but to what extent some of these meetings are mandatory and part of the deals of these actors?
We don't ask. In some cases, for instance, if we don't, this is something that the qualitative part of the project should have been investigated, but we didn't. In the case of the general central administration, we didn't do the qualitative part because of the COVID, etc. But in the regional government, we are starting the qualitative part now. So we are asking why they think.
And this is perceived influence, not
Perceived.
actual.
No, this is perceived, how they perceived. But we are asking, I mean, people that is in the core of decision making. So they I think they have a better idea about who is influential or not. This is the contrast with the stakeholders. Again, the pattern is different for stakeholders. For the control variables, I only present some interesting results. So in the case of academics, the degree of agreement in the policy area has a significant effect. The more consensus within a policy area, the more influential academics are perceived in those policy areas. Okay, which makes sense according to the advocacy coalition framework theory. In regional governments, the pattern is repeated for academics and also for stakeholders. So stakeholders are perceived to be more influential in those areas where there's a higher degree of consensus. So this can kind of have some kind of relationship with, some kind of corporatist functioning of policy making at this level. About organizational analytic capacities in the central administration, we see that there is a negative effect. The more the analytical capacities within a ministry, the less they think that people outside is influential. We have the expertise. We don't need experts in the decision-making process. Okay, this is a proxy I use, which is the number of personnel in the A1 and A2 civil servant groups within the central services of the ministries. This is a rough proxy, but we also use a proxy which produced the same effect, which was the proportion of people in the special civil service groups, which have a component, a scientific or engineering component. So the more engineers or scientists or doctors you have in your ministry, the less you need external experts.
This is a bit counterintuitive if I think of firms and their absorptive capacity. So the more knowledgeable people you have inside the firm, you are better to absorb and you are more curious.
Yeah, but not in the public administration, because this is about, I think my guess is this is about power, influencing decision making.
Yeah.
So, and this is what you get from the other information I showed. That most of the information comes from inside the ministry. The ministries have a lot of expertise within. parties. Parties are important in the perception of the influence. So, which party has a different way of looking at stakeholders or experts? Vox. Okay, Vox see experts less influential. Also, in some cases, regional parties, and also for consultants as well. But in this case, is the Socialist Party which is producing the most important part of the effect. And in the case of stakeholders, we see that it is Vox and also the regional or nationalist parties, the parties that see stakeholders more influential. So they see that the perception is that people from outside has a lot of influence in the policy making, in this case. And this is about individual analytic capacities, which is that the basic takeaway is that the more one top-level officer is familiar with scientific research methods, the more he or she appreciates the influence of experts in policymaking, but also in the case of stakeholders. So these are the basic conclusions. I mentioned some of these conclusions before. External experts have a reduced role in policymaking in Spain compared with intramural sources. Top-level officers prefer academics to other types of external experts. The question is why they prefer academics to other sources. Some difference between national and subnational levels, and the perceived influence of experts is mostly related to the intensity of interactions with policymakers. But also we have some contextual factors that affect the perception of the influence of experts in the policymaking process. So that's all. Thank you very much for your patience. This is a working process, so I will be very happy if you help me to improve this.